have to tell you, folks, President Trump just hit a grand slam home run at the United Nations. In everything he touched on, in everything he spoke about, I've never thought I would ever see this. He looked them right in the eye, and he told them why socialism and communism are abject failures every time they've been tried, everywhere they are. He looked them right in the eye and told them everything. You know what did not come up? Not one word, not one syllable, not one reference to climate change or global warming at the United Nations in the speech by President Trump. We'll get to those sound bites in due course. We're also going to get, of course, as you can expect, the latest in this despicable. It gets more despicable. It gets more disgusting with the passing of each day. Judge Kavanaugh and his wife went on Fox News last night. I know there are different takes, different reactions to the interview that occurred. Martha McCallum with Judge Kavanaugh and his wife. But I'm going to just tell you that the fact that something like that even occurred with the subject matter that came up is itself despicable. It's just simply outrageous. It was uncomfortable to watch this. I knew exactly what was going on, and by the way, it served a great purpose. However, forget the whatever you thought of it, and I'm sure the reactions, the thoughts, the emotions of that run the gamut. But one thing that it did, I am a firm believer. We had the story yesterday that this loose cannon Avenatti, who is a lawyer for the stripper. What's her name out there? Stormy Daniels. Yeah, Stormy Daniels. Oh, by the way, there's a link on the Drudge Report that says a judge in that case is ready to toss her lawsuit against Trump on the basis that Trump had every right to say what he wanted to say. It can't be actionable and so forth. The judge hasn't thrown it out yet, but the story says that he's on the verge of doing it. But Avenatti, as we so disgustingly shared with you yesterday, Avenatti said that within 48 hours, he was going to produce a witness that would testify to the fact that Kavanaugh and his buddy Mark Judge got women drunk while at college, got them drunk and gave them pills and started a rape train for their male buddies. And he said he was going to produce this witness in 48 hours. He was demanding to be heard by the committee. He was demanding to testify and so forth. Today, his Twitter account is locked. I'll tell you what I think. I think much of what the left has been doing has been designed to get Kavanaugh to throw in the towel. I think they've wanted Kavanaugh to quit, and I think they've been trying to get Trump to pull a nomination. So there's Kavanaugh and his wife last night on Fox saying, I was a virgin. I'm a good Catholic boy. I was a virgin long after high school. I didn't do any of this stuff. People watching this are saying, gee, oh, by the way, do you know what else I've learned? Have you noticed, because I have you noticed watching all this that the left and the drive-bys are using the word penis more and more and more whenever they're discussing this kind of thing? You know why? Apparently there's polling data, and I need to have, you women are going to have to back this up because it's just polling data. You know what I think of polling data? Polling data is that women hate the word. They just despise the word. And they react negatively to the word. And that's why this dildo story is all over, the Ramirez story. Kavanaugh rubbing the dildo in the face, whatever. This is just, it's so beneath. It is so beneath the so-called professed dignity and civility that the left is always demanding. And look where they're taking us. Anyway, so I think Avenatti's claim of a rape train, I think one of the purposes of that was to make Kavanaugh and his team go, for crying out loud, look, this isn't come on. Are you kidding? I'm not gonna stand up there and defend myself against it. They wanted him to drop out. Now that he hasn't, instead of dropping out, he goes on Fox, he does the interview, and he spends all this time backing up his character and so forth. I don't think that was what the left expected. I really think they think that he was going to bug out. they're not in touch with reality. They really do believe, and I thought they believed that Kavanaugh, they could make him quit and make Trump pull the nomination. I still don't think that Christine Ballsy Ford's going to testify Thursday. I don't think she's going to ever testify, but people can disagree. But we've already got, Feinstein's already talking about canceling the hearing on Thursday. Now they're upset. The Republicans have gone out and hired an independent female prosecutor with a lawyer who is an expert in sexual abuse cases to do the interviewing. And the left, no. We want Republican senators doing the question. Of course they do. They want to set it up where these old white senators are berating and demeaning the courageous and gutsy and ballsy Christine Ford. And so they're balking. They're, and I told you yesterday that the time we get there, it's going to be unsafe and not conducive to her testifying. And I think she's still balking. She's still trying to get it arranged so she wouldn't have to go under oath and all that. You remember you yesterday. You couldn't believe it when I said that I didn't think she would testify. You thought it was going to happen. You still think it's going to happen? You just don't doubt my track record. Don't doubt my track. The audio sound bites. My warning to Republicans that if they cave on this, that they can kiss the midterms goodbye. The drive-bys loved it. It was all over cable news yesterday afternoon and last night. Now, folks, before getting into any more specifics of this particular incident, and there are updates, of course, there are two pieces here that I want to share with you that are, I think, foundational in terms of helping to understand what we're up against. What has become of the American left? Who is the American left? Why are they the way they are? I have opined recently that decent people just don't have any idea how to deal with this. Decent people do not wallow in muck. Decent people do not sit around and try to anticipate what's going to come next from the indecent among us. They live their lives. They try to do the best they can. Everybody faces obstacles in life. They do their best in overcoming them. Some do well, some don't. But decent people are not obsessed with what's coming next from the indecent side. And the indecent side is devoted to nothing but shock and awe as a means of forcing their indecency and perversion and all that on society and having it accepted as normal. And I have been back and forth in my mind trying to come up with ways to explain what I think the left is, who they are. And the closest I've come to it is my detailed and inarguable explanations and definitions of victimhood, victimology, and how we got there and what it means for society at large. Now, there were two pieces that just conveniently, coincidentally, have come along to help me back up and elaborate on my gut instincts about this. One of them is a little blog post from Jim Garrity at National Review, and the other is another column by the great and brilliant Dr. Shelby Steele, whose latest piece that runs in the Wall Street Journal is called Why the Left is Consumed with Hate. These two pieces go together quite well. What did I do? There's another story just to illustrate how out of whack things are. To set this up, this story from BloombergQuint.com. So that's a Bloomberg derivative. You ready for this headline? Millennials are causing the U.S. divorce rate to plummet. This is not good. The divorce rate plummeting, according to this piece, is the latest evidence of inequality in America. No. Here's the last sentence. Let me read it to you. Fewer divorces, therefore, aren't only bad news for matrimonial lawyers, but they are a sign of America's widening chasm of inequality. Marriage is becoming a more durable but far more exclusive institution. People that get married and don't get divorced have an unfair advantage over people that do get divorced. And it's not fair, it's unequal, and it's a very, very bad trend. So just like every variance in the weather is blamed on non-existent man-made global warming or climate change, the leftist drive-bys are now blaming all things socially on inequality. Americans under the age of 45 have found a novel way to rebel against their elders. They're staying married. By the way, a little side note to this story is that the children of divorced parents stay married. That this is the result of surveys. It's statistical. It's not every one, but the vast majority of kids from broken homes or divorced homes, when they get married, they stay married. New data show that younger couples are approaching relationships very differently from baby boomers who married young, divorced, remarried, and so on. Generation X, and especially millennials, are being pickier about who they marry, tying the knot at older ages when education, careers, and finances are on track as opposed to before so. The result is a U.S. divorce rate that dropped 18% from 2008 to 2016, according to an analysis by University of Maryland sociology professor Philip Cohen. Now, demographers already knew the divorce rate was falling, even if the average American didn't. Their question, however, was why was the divorce rate falling? It's a bad thing, you see. Now, we all know that sociology and social sciences teach us just the exact opposite, that society is much better off with a low divorce rate as opposed to high. But see, that leads to too much inequality and injustice. One theory is that divorce rates are falling largely because of other demographic changes, especially an aging population. Older people are less likely to get divorced, so maybe mellowing baby boomers were enough to explain the trend. Cohen's analysis of U.S. Census Bureau survey data, however, suggests something more fundamental is at work. Even when he controls for factors like age, the divorce rate over the same period still dropped 8%. One of the reasons for the decline is that the married population is getting older, more highly educated. Many poorer and less educated Americans are opting not to get married at all. They're living together and often raising kids together, but deciding not to tie the knot. And studies have shown these cohabitating relationships are less stable than they used to be. Fewer divorces, therefore, are not only bad news for matrimonial lawyers, but a sign of America's widening chasm of inequality. Marriage is becoming a more durable but far more exclusive institution. Now, who but deranged people would look at it this way? The divorce rate plummeting is bad news for America because it's a sign of even greater inequality, a sign of a greater division. Anybody thinks like this, you have to work to be this illogical. I don't know where this kind of thing comes from, that a plummeting divorce rate is a bad sign for America in the left's crazy world of inequality and social justice and their quest to make everybody the same. So that's just an example of the, I mean, that folks, that is not, that kind of analysis, and this is a sociology professor, University of Maryland, this is not stable. That kind of thinking is not, well, it's not normal. And yet there it is, and it's out there, and it's being widely reported with the drive-by media, probably applauded and supported by others. So where is this coming from? Where is all of this indecency coming from? Why? Why is it so taking over the American left? And that's where these two pieces come in. Jim Garrity's little blog post and Shelby Steele's piece. So let's take a brief time out. We'll get to that. And believe me, these two things will set up everything that follows that we talk about regarding Kavanaugh, Ballsy Ford, Ramirez, Avenatti, and that whole sick bunch that we call the Democrat Party or the American left.
You're listening to Rush Limbaugh,
The big voice on the right.
on the EIB network.
An email. Rush, you sound so confident about all of this in terms of the way you describe the left and what they're going to do and what they're thinking. How you can't be that confident. Nobody is. Yes, I can, folks. Look, I really don't like talking about me, and I really don't like inserting myself into situations like this where I have nothing to do with it. But experience, guided by intelligence, this has happened to me. And not just one time. It has happened to me in a major way, and if I said 3 words, you would remember it. St. Louis Rams. When it was revealed that I was a minority participant in an ownership group to buy it, look at the lies and the literal garbage that the entire United States media and sports media published about me. That I was advocating for a return to slavery because blacks were better off in those days. Things I had never said, things I had never even thought, places I had never been where I was saying these things, and they were just echoing and being amplified all over the country. And it was after this, the fact that I was in this ownership group, it leaked on ESPN, and I know where it came from. Goldman Sachs was arranging the sale of the Rams, and I was a minority participant in this ownership group, and they put it out there that I was one of the figureheads and decision makers and so forth. And I'm sitting here bombarded with, and not a single reporter ever called me to ask me, is it true? Did you say? It all emanated from books that were made up about me and lies. They were Media Matters things. They were things that if I had let go and not talked about could have ended a career. You just can't say you support a return to slavery because it was better for African Americans back. They had me saying that. We spent weekends preparing a dossier, if you will, a notebook finder disproving all of this, and sent it to everybody we knew in the NFL. So, and I'm not trying to relive, I'm just telling you, I have experienced this. I know who these people are. Even if that had not happened to me, I know who these people are. And that instance was not the only one over the course of my 30 years here. So do not doubt me when I tell you what's on the minds of these people on the left and their tactics and how they go about it. And when I tell you that the media publishes things that nobody's ever said and nobody's ever done, like Kavanaugh, you can make book on the fact that they're making it up or believing somebody who is making it up. Don't doubt me. There's nobody understands these people and willing to say it than I am. Hang on. We'll get to these two pieces right after this.
Now,
By the way, National Geographic Channel last night did a show focusing on the 90s, and your host was a central focus of their focus on the 90s. In fact, National Geographic Channel last night focused on how I changed politics forever, which is probably true. And of course, they, like everybody that doesn't know what they're talking about, blamed the lifting of the fairness doctrine. So that is coming up. First, Jim Garrity. Folks, this is so right on the money. The more time I spend covering politics, Mr. Garrity writes, the more I'm convinced that a significant chunk of grassroots political activists aren't really arguing about politics at all. These people are actually battling personal psychological issues and projecting it onto the world of politics. Every problem they had with a parent is projected onto authority figures. Every religious person who ever scolded them or made them feel guilty becomes the embodiment of all organized religion and demonstrates the menace of organized religion. Because they've had a bad experience with a member of a minority group, that experience reveals something sinister about every member of that minority group. The cop who wrote him a ticket instead of giving him a warning demonstrates the danger and corruption of law enforcement can lead to Black Lives Matter. The boss who fired them for shoddy work exemplifies the inherent cruelty of the capitalist system. And every frustrating experience they had with an ex-girlfriend demonstrates some defect in women. And that can be the opposite. Every frustrating experience with an ex-boyfriend demonstrates the defect in all men. I think a lot of the issues they are grappling with stem from the fact that most of these people have never done anything big with their lives, and so everything has to be imbued with drama of an approaching Armageddon in order for them to feel as though their meaningless lives have meaning. Now, I have said this over and over again, a different way. Everybody wants their life to have meaning. Everybody wants to matter. And a lot of people feel overwhelmed, powerless, and like they don't matter. And one of the fastest ways to make yourself feel like you matter is to become a victim, member of an organized victim group. And when you do that, a number of sea changes occur to you. When you become a member of a victim group, you are admitting that you are a failure. But you are admitting it isn't your fault. It's society's at large, or the cops, or capitalism, or religion, or something. When you become a victim, you are then signaling that you were owed. People need to give you something for all of the mistreatment that you have suffered. I think this is so right on the money, and I could give you some classic examples, like transgenderism. I know that there are many transgenders in this audience, so I have to be careful here. I just want to tell you that there is a former, I guess he's a retired director of the Department of Psychiatry at Johns Hopkins Medical Center and University, who wrote many years ago that sexual identity is a psychological issue and it needs to be treated as such, not with gender change surgery and this kind of thing. That it's a sad thing, it's very unfortunate, but it needs to be dealt with therapeutically and so forth. Of course, he has been ignored or destroyed, depending on when his name comes up. But that's not the only example. I think this is so right on the money, and there's so many elements of this that ring true. The feeling of powerlessness, the comforting thought that it's not your fault, that you're a victim of some powerful entity or person or system. And then you become a member of the victim group and you have instant rage and anger that is justified and encouraged. And then you enter the political system under the aegis of your psychological problems being legitimate political issues. These people all naturally will gravitate to the left because that's where psychological disorders primarily reside. The Democrat Party has made it well known that they will use whatever they can in order to win power. And so they have built a coalition of very disparate groups, minorities, including women and union workers over the years, African Americans, Hispanics, Latinos, you name it. But in each instance, they're not, in terms of the rank and file, they're not successful. as Garrity writes, they've really not had something big happen in their lives. They've not had something reinforcing that they're worth liking themselves, worth loving themselves. And so if you notice, the leftists are constantly angry. They're always agitated. They're never happy, even when they get what they want. Even when they get more than they want, they're never happy. What kind of disorder? Like last night, Ted Cruz and his wife were hounded out of a restaurant in Washington. Ari Fleischer writing about it. He says, I've been to Washington a long time. This is a sick town. This is a sick town. Simply because you disagree with somebody, you go into a restaurant and you start hounding them to the point that they have to leave. That isn't normal. But the Democrat Party normalizes it and promotes it, validates it, empowers it. And so all of these various disorders of one kind or another become empowered and fundamentally important to the electability and future of the Democrat Party. Sad thing is, the Democrats don't do one thing to really help these people. Their policies don't help them. Their direct attempts to help them don't help them, because Democrat constituents are constantly enraged. They are constantly angry. They're mad, unhappy, blaming everybody, somebody else, for whatever they think their plight is. They invest in the Democrat Party to fix it, and fix it means get even with whoever it is that's responsible for these people feeling the way they feel. Get even with the church. Get even with the cops. Get even with the Koch brothers. Get even with whoever it is that epitomizes capitalism. It becomes understandable when you see these people desiring tax increases on the rich. They don't care whether it helps or hurts them. Doesn't matter. As long as somebody gets punished. The Democrat Party has become the party where most of its constituents want the leadership of the party to punish. And so Kavanaugh, as the latest example, is being punished simply because he is normal, simply because he has achieved, simply because he's done something that most leftists and Democrats can't and haven't. That isn't fair. It's unequal. And so he's got to be taken out just on that basis alone, because Kavanaugh represents grand inequality. Kavanaugh represents what's wrong with America in any way. So regardless whether he's guilty or not, he's got to be destroyed. Once they set their targets, once they put you in the crosshairs, doesn't matter what you've done. You've got to go, because rage and demanding punishment is the elixir in their minds. That's what's going to make them feel better. The thing is, it never does. Even when they succeed in having their enemies punished, it never makes them satisfied. And it can't, because as victims, they have built a wall, a block into discovering what actually is to be fixed in their lives to change them. By becoming a victim, you say, I've done the best I can. I can't do any more because the world's stacked against me, and I'm going to have my buddies in the Democrat Party protect me and get even with the people who've made my life miserable. I think Garrity is exactly right about this. Again, he writes, the more time I spend covering politics, the more I'm convinced that a significant chunk of grassroots political activists aren't really arguing about politics. They're actually battling with personal psychological issues and projecting all of that onto the world of politics. In other words, politics is to blame. And of course, when we're talking about who's to blame, well, you blame the normal, you blame the happy, you blame the satisfied. Who's that? Well, in the modern day, it has become conservatives or it's become Republicans. And that's the battle that we're in the middle of. And most people on our side don't have any idea. They don't recognize it. We think, well, this is the left. This is American politics. It's a Democrat Party. And it is, in the sense that these people are Democrats and vote Democrat precisely because they think the Democrats are going to punish whoever it is that ruined their lives. made them miserable, made them unhappy. And it runs the gamut. You can explain this with every different Democrat constituency. You could illustrate the point with pick women, you could make the point. Speaking of which, somebody sent me a note last night. I said, you know what, Rush, this Me Too movement, it started out as a bipartisan movement. Now look what's happened. The left is hijacked. What? The Me Too movement was never bipartisan. Who thinks that? Raise your hand in there. You think the Me Too movement was bipartisan? You know why people think that? Because it went after a Democrat first, Harvey Weinstein. Well, it must have been bipartisan. No, it was never. Let me ask you this. Do you know of a conservative group that would ever start something like the Me Too movement? You don't. Do you know any? It would never happen. The Me Too movement was a left-wing movement from the get-go. It was a Democrat Party, George Soros, bought and paid for, structured movement from the get-go. Well, Rush, if that's true, then why did they go for a Democrat first? Weinstein. Easy. After Hillary lost the election, there were powers that be in the media, which runs the Democrat Party, don't forget, in my humble estimation, that wants to wipe the Clintons off of the slate. The Democrat Party, there are some in there that want to get rid of the Clintons as bad as some Republicans do. They've known for decades what Weinstein was doing and who he was. It wasn't a shock. The shock was the New York Times ran the story. And here comes Ronan Farrow. And adding to it, NBC blockades that because they've got their own army of sexual harassers being protected in the news division. But the reason they went after Weinstein, because he's a big Clintonista, he was a Clinton donor, he's a Clinton fundraiser. That's what that was about. That's why they went after him first. And as it kept going, guess who it kept outing? The Me Too movement kept outing liberal Democrats in Hollywood. Well, we can't have that. I mean, the Me Too movement was taking out its own people. The Me Too movement was taking out its own captains. So the Me Too movement had to make a drastic change in direction. It was never bipartisan. Now, people think it was because women across the political spectrum united against a single foe, sexual harassment and abusers, and it didn't matter if they were Republicans or Democrats, but it does. Keith Ellison will not even be investigated for a legitimate allegation. The Democrats are ignoring it. Ted Kennedy, Bill Clinton, been through all that. But here's a Republican, didn't do anything he's being accused of doing, and look, he's now got to prove he didn't do it. Rule of law being stood upside down on its head. We'll get to Shelby Steele when we get back here. Don't go away.
You're listening to Rush Limbaugh,
The soundtrack of your conservative life.
on the EIB network.
Okay, my second piece that buttresses the explanation of what we're up against and who it really is comes from Shelby Steele, who is simply brilliant. He's a scholar of long standing at the Hoover Institution, a conservative tank of thinkers out there at the Stanford campus in Palo Alto. And his piece called Why the Left is Consumed with Hate, Lacking Worthy Menaces to Fight, the Left is Driven to Find a Replacement for Racism. Failing this, what's left? That's the subhead. Now, here's the conclusion. I'm going to go backwards, forwards. Conclusion. Yet the left is still stalked by obsolescence. There simply is not enough real menace to service its demands for power, meaning there isn't real mean-spirited racism, sexism, bigotry out there. They have to make it up. They have to manufacture it. They have to lie about it, such as Kavanaugh. He's not a racist, sexist, bigot, homophobic, any of these things, but look what they're saying about him. His point is they've run out of real menaces. The voices that speak for the left have never been less convincing, Shelby Steele says. It's hard for people to see the menace that drives millionaire football players to kneel before the flag. And then there is the failure of virtually every program the left has espoused. Welfare, public housing, school busing, affirmative action, diversity programs, and so on. For the American left today, the indulgence in hate is a death rattle. They have run out of legitimate enemies and opposition. America is not this dastardly place they make it out to be. And they keep swooping to the bottom of the gutter and lower, coming up with new menaces that they have to manufacture. And hate is the latest one. How did the American left conceive to bring more compassion and justice to the world in their minds? And believe me, in their minds, that's what liberalism is. More compassion, more tolerance, more justice. It's absurd, but that's what they think. How did the American left become so given to hate? It began in the 1960s when America finally accepted that slavery and segregation were profound moral failings. That acceptance, the admittance, the admission that America had a really rotten element in its past, when America finally accepted that slavery and segregation were profound moral failings, that acceptance changed America forever. It imposed a new moral imperative. America would have to show itself redeemed of these immoralities in order to stand as a legitimate democracy. And as far as the American left is concerned, that redemption can never happen by design. America can never redeem itself. America can never recover. The genius of the left in the 60s was to perceive this new moral imperative and identify itself with it, and then claim that America was an admitted failure with no hope of improving. And that has carried forward even to today. Back here in just a second, folks.
Rush Limbaugh, because we know for you, only the best will do. On the EIB Network.
Great to have you. Folks, we're reaching that point of the program where I realize that everything I've got here, I'm going to have trouble getting in. And that then starts, I start feeling the pressure. I've got so much, I got great phone calls. I've got a bunch of stuff I really need to get to. And I'm feeling the pressure that I might not be able to squeeze it all in there. So we're just going to try. A telephone number, if you want to be on the program, 800-282-2882. The email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. Grab soundbite number 33. This soundbite of me yesterday on the program talking about what's going to happen to Republicans if they don't confirm Kavanaugh is making the rounds of cable television all afternoon yesterday and now even into today. And the president even just tweeted it. The president just tweeted my comment, and which means he endorses it. Look, I had no idea that it was going to be glommed onto by virtually every drive-by media outlet, but it has been. This is why I said if Grassley waits long enough, the Democrats will come up with a woman claiming to be Kavanaugh's secret Russian wife. That Trump paid Kavanaugh's second wife to hire a bunch of prostitutes to urinate on the bed Obama slept in when he was in Moscow. If they wait long enough, somebody's going to come up with that woman. Kavanaugh's second wife, who's responsible for Trump urinating on the bed in Moscow. From the dossier. Here's CNN discussing it just moments ago on the noontime show hosted by John King.
You're getting from the voices of Rush Limbaugh telling Republicans, don't be cowards, don't blink.
If the Republicans do not get this vote taken and have Kavanaugh confirmed, you can kiss the midterms goodbye. You can kiss goodbye holding the House, and you can kiss goodbye holding the Senate. Because whatever the Democrats think of their base, the one thing I know is that if you guys fold on this and cave and keep bending over backwards, you've done that enough. If you guys don't conduct this vote in defiance of all this, and if Avenatti gets 1 foot in the door to a Senate committee to start telling his story, then you can kind of kiss goodbye Republican chances in the midterms in November.
A pretty honest, this is about power, description from Rush Limbaugh. That this is not, in the case of Professor Ford, at the minimum, an accomplished person who has a credible allegation. Brett Kavanaugh denies it. They both deserve to be heard and treated fairly. But Rush Limbaugh's not talking about that. He's talking about, you do this, or else our voters won't come out and you will lose power.
How can I be misunderstood here? This woman has had more than an opportunity to tell her story. There isn't any evidence. I got to back it off here. She has no evidence. Nobody has any evidence. That used to matter. That used to be the determinant. She has no evidence. She can't remember when. She can't remember where. She can't remember the people in the room, and the number keeps changing. Originally, it was 4 people, and everybody that she's named has denied it, including one of her friends. She doesn't have any evidence. She doesn't want to testify under oath. There is no reason to believe her. This is not about honesty and power. This is about the rule of law and how it's being stood upside down in this instance because it's been corrupted by politics since the left has injected their ideology into this. And when the left gets involved in the rule of law, it changes. The accuser never has to prove anything. The accuser must be believed. The accused is automatically guilty and cannot exonerate himself no matter what he does. He should just go away, and the Republicans should stop defending him. This isn't about power. This is about politics. And it's about the absolute bastardization of the rule of law. They didn't play it in a clip. I said as part of my little statement yesterday, Senator Grassley, you guys have done everything you could to show fairness. You've offered to fly out to her when she said she was nervous about coming to Washington because she can't fly, yet she somehow got to Hawaii. You have offered to have any number of ways for her to tell her story. You have made it abundantly clear you want to hear her story. You don't have to do any more to prove your fairness and your openness. The fact of the matter is, this woman was never going to testify. Her lawyers, the point is not what she has to say. It never has been. The point is to stop and derail and delay the process here, hopefully beyond the elections that the Democrats think they're going to win, so that then they can have a justifiable reason for not going forward with this, because they're going to control the House and Senate come January, and they would not confirm this guy anyway. That's all this has ever been about, is delaying and stopping, and it only happened after the Democrats realized, after going through millions of pages of documents of Kavanaugh writings and utterings and sayings, that they had nothing on him. Only at the last minute did Dianne Feinstein leak this thing out, her letter, because they had exhausted every other attempt, legitimate attempt to get Kavanaugh. But he passed his own testimony with flying colors. He passed his exam. He passed 6 FBI background checks throughout the entire time he has been a federal judge. There is nothing that has been found to disqualify him. It's quite the opposite. He is among the most qualified to ever be nominated for the United States Supreme Court, and that is the real problem, because he is a conservative. There is no justifiable reason to not go forward with this confirmation vote. The woman has been extended every opportunity and has failed to access and act on every invitation and opportunity. The Senate leadership has bent over and been flexible with all of the demands that her left-wing activist George Soros-funded lawyer have demanded. And after each supposed agreement, something happens, like a new accuser, to make them say, well, wait a minute, this is becoming a circus, and my client doesn't feel safe. My client doesn't feel secure. Yeah, your client also didn't want Kavanaugh in the room and wanted Kavanaugh to go first. That doesn't happen in any decent, legal proceeding or society. The accused gets his day in court, but only after he knows what he's being accused of. And until she testifies to it, all the rest of this doesn't mean anything. Do you think, let me ask you, this is a logical question, do you think Christine Blasey Ford will ever go under oath? Well, I'm just asking because once you do that, That changes everything. You go under oath. There's a reason why it leaked out that she didn't want to go under oath. You go under oath. Hello, lawyers. You go under oath and make these allegations that you can't prove, that nobody can prove. I don't think it has ever been the case that Christine Ford was going to testify. I don't think they thought it would get to this point. I believe just like they thought that they would beat Trump and wipe Trump out, just like they thought the Access Hollywood video would destroy Trump's campaign, they thought all that they have done now with the Avenatti pile-on yesterday would force Kavanaugh, for the sake of protecting his family and the rest of his life, to say, screw this, and withdraw his nomination. He hasn't. He went on Fox last night and doubled down. He's in it, and he's going to fight it side by side with Donald Trump. Not supposed to happen. Kavanaugh, Trump behaving not according to the Democrats' script that they had dreamed of or imagined. So the idea that she hasn't been treated fairly is not true. They have established deadlines, and she has missed them, and they changed the deadline. They have given her how many additional days to show up and testify, and each deadline comes and goes, and another excuse is offered as to why she can't make it, and another one is offered by Chairman Grassley. In my mind, the Republicans don't have a thing to prove in terms of showing their fairness and their legitimate desire to hear her. The president has said it would be wonderful if she testified. The Republicans have made it abundantly clear they want to hear what she has to say. The only person who has not availed themselves of the opportunities that have been offered is the doctor, Dr. Ford, for whom the red carpet has been rolled out. And she refuses to even drive up to the carpet and get out of the car and show up. And I don't think she ever intends to. Folks, she doesn't have any evidence. This is the one thing everybody's forgetting. All we've got here is an allegation, or a series of them. The names that she's given do not corroborate people. She can't remember enough specifics. We get excuses for that. Well, yeah, that's right, Mr. Limbaugh. She's so traumatized. She worked so hard to forget this and didn't ever want to remember it until Kavanaugh's name was mentioned. Well, how many years went by after Kavanaugh's name was mentioned for this job and that job and so forth, and she never came forward. She didn't come forward. She wasn't brought forward, however this happened, until the Democrats ran out of ammo. When the Democrats ran out of ammo, it's, hey, Di-Fi, you still have that letter? This is the time to drop it. And so the Democrats the people that have put Christine Ford's identity in the public domain. It is they who have made her feel unsafe and insecure. By the way, who sends a letter of allegations like this and says, by the way, I don't want you to do anything with this, and I don't want you to mention my name, and I don't want you moving this forward? Who sends a letter like that? Do we even know, I dare ask, that she wrote this letter? Do we even know? How much do we really know? I'm asking that question not because I think anything. I'm just trying to focus everybody on how much do we know. The answer is zip. She doesn't have any evidence. When it looked like her turn at bat wasn't going to produce a hit, here comes the Ramirez story from the New Yorker, where we get the same thing. Nobody in that story can corroborate it. There's not a single eyewitness for what Ramirez says happened. So here comes Avenatti with the rape train story and a promise that within 48 hours, one of his victims is going to show up and be a witness. In the midst of all of this, the Republicans have demonstrated an overwhelming inarguable opportunity after opportunity for Dr. Ford to be heard. And it is Dr. Ford who has not accepted the invitations and taken advantage of the opportunity. The Republicans have got to somehow escape the thinking that overwhelms or takes everyone in Washington and realize how their voters are seeing this. They see this for what it is. It's a setup. It's been a setup from the get-go. We've seen it before. How many times have we seen this in one form or another? How many times have they run scams like this? Just earlier this week, yesterday, the news media told us for 7 hours that Rosenstein was going to the White House to quit before he was fired. No, it was a regularly scheduled meeting. Rosenstein wasn't fired, and now it might not be till Thursday. Now, Lisa Murkowski starting to get wobbly out there, and the drive-bys and the Democrats are still focusing on Susan Collins, because it looks like now that there's not a single Democrat that's going to... That's another thing, that there were a lot of Democrats that were going to vote for Kavanaugh when this all ended. They're from red states. They don't want to anger the voters in those states who supported Trump in a wide margins in the 2016 election. But then they drag this stuff all up. The Democrats thinking, hey, you know what? We've done this so well that our red state Democrats don't need to vote for this nominee in order to save themselves. So now they're focusing on Murkowski, and Murkowski was, this is on CNN earlier today, one of their reporters, Manu Raju. So I just asked Senator Murkowski, key Republican swing vote, if there should be a full FBI investigation into allegations from Kavanaugh's past. Murkowski said, well, it would sure clear up all the questions, wouldn't it? No. What is there to investigate? She can't remember where. She doesn't know what. She doesn't even remember the date. She's not even sure of the year. We're talking Haskell. We're talking 35 years ago. How does the FBI investigate this? Anybody? That's right. Put Peter Strzok, Smirk, and Lisa Page on it. Grab Andrew Weissman from the Mueller team. By the way, I think, this is not being widely commented upon, but I think that's fallen apart on him, too. I think the Mueller thing is about to fall apart. I think Mueller knows it. There's nothing there. There wasn't any collusion. Michael Flynn ought to have all of his charges dropped. He ought not to spend a single day in jail. Every charge against him on lying to the FBI, all that stuff ought to be lifted. They're literally, after all this time, they've got nothing. The left has nothing on Trump. They've got nothing on Kavanaugh. And that's not a wild guess. It is the state of play as we sit here today. Let me tell you something. If there were any evidence from this, but when Kavanaugh goes on television and says, I was a virgin all through high school and from years, do you realize all it's going to take is some Democrat to find a woman who was in high school with Kavanaugh? Oh, no, he wasn't. Don't be surprised if they try that. What do you think? They wouldn't try that? Well, the point is, why would Kavanaugh say it knowing it is so easily confused? I mean, Democrats go and find anybody, pay them what? Drag a dollar bill through a trailer park, James Carville said. So go to a trailer park, drag a dollar bill, whoever takes it, bring him to Washington and have him say, I had sex with the guy, he's not a virgin.
Rush Limbaugh, making radio great again. You're listening to the EIB Network.
We're going to come back to the break at the bottom here. I went long in the previous segment. It's a short segment here. We're going to get to the phones, but there's other news out there that dovetails with this. Republican Party favorability highest in 7 years. This story hit right near the end of the program yesterday. It's a Gallup poll. 45% of Americans now have a favorable view of the Republican Party. That's a 9-point gain from last September, 36%. The Republican Party is trending up. Trump is trending up. Consumer confidence is at a record high. The real life events in America do not indicate a massive vote for Democrats in November. Life on the ground as people live it. Republican Party favorability sky high. During all of this, Trump's approval numbers bumping up during all of this. Don't buy this blue wave stuff. And there's more to back this up, which we'll get to after this brief timeout. Trump is calling this entire episode with Christine Ballsy Ford and Ms. Ramirez a con game. Soundbite comment. In addition to the Republican Party favorability highest in 7 years, Rasmussen, 42% say the U.S. is heading in the right direction, 52% say wrong track. But last year at this time, 33% said we were heading in the right direction, 60% said in the wrong direction. So the trends are toward massive improvement in people's assessment of life on the ground. And here's more. Same Gallup poll. Democrats lose advantage with middle-class Americans, and the gender gap is collapsing. Whoa, wait, a gender gap. The gender gap is male, female gap. What that usually means is when the media starts talking gender gap, it means Republicans are losing the female vote because they conduct a war on women. The Democrat Party's advantage among American women suffered a 6% swing over the past year, according to a Gallup poll released Monday. In the latest poll, GOP favorability rose to 40%. Democrat favorability fell. Democrats have completely lost their advantage with American men. Republicans now enjoy an advantage with middle-class voters. A year ago, Democrats led Republicans 46 to 36 in the income bracket, 30,000 to 75,000. Now Republicans have the lead, 49 to 45. Now, none of this argues for a blue wave. The media says that we're going to blue wave because everybody hates Trump and everybody hates Republicans, and they're justified. Why, just look at the Christine Ford situation, and that's it. Oh, they have their polling data, the generic ballot. And you know what they're doing with the generic ballot? You said the generic ballot poll came out the other day. Registered voters, Democrats have a 12-point advantage or some such thing in the generic ballot. But the generic ballot of registered voters doesn't mean anything. Likely voters is the key. And they ran their data, but among likely voters, and the 12-point edge shrank to 6. Still a 6-point edge for the Democrats. But again, it's with no names on ballots, just a party preference thing. Anyway, let me get started on the phones. There are a lot of people there. Todd in Chapel Hills, Tennessee. I'm glad that you waited. Hi, sir. How are you?
Hey, Rush. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I'm sure you already got it, but about 40 minutes ago, President Trump tweeted your comments yesterday about the Republicans can kiss the midterms goodbye.
I didn't know that until I saw your call here up on the board.
Yes.
And I started asking if what you were saying was accurate. It was. And so they sent me the tweet, and I now have it. So so what was your reaction when you saw that?
Well, I mean, you're exactly right. But what I wanted to ask your opinion about,
yes.
Do you think Republicans behind the scenes are trying to make a deal where they'll say, we'll take Garland if you give us Kavanaugh? in the near future.
Where now? What Republicans and behind what scene is this discussion happening?
Well, I'm just thinking to myself, because I know how Republicans are. They're weak.
You haven't heard this. You conjured this up on your own.
Yes.
Okay. Well, the only thing I'd say about it is that the Republicans can talk about all this they want, but it's the president that nominates people. And unless he's in on the talks, but the Democrats are, this climate, I don't see the Democrats going for. Let me tell you the truth of something here. If Scalia had passed away in any year other than the year he did, in other words, if Obama had a Supreme Court nomination not in an election year, he would have never nominated Merrick Garland. The secret here is the Democrats would never put Merrick Garland up if there was a Supreme Court opening and it was outside an election year. If they had the White House and if they had the Senate, Merrick Garland would never be nominated by the Democrats. He's too moderate. He's too old. The reason Obama named Merrick Garland is because he was as close to a secret hidden progressive as he could get that might be confirmed. The Democrats wanted Scalia's seat. They thought Merrick Garland would pass muster with the Republicans, but the Republicans remembered the Biden rule. So the Democrats, the truth be known, the Democrats are having their rear ends bitten off by their own policies. Harry Reid nukes the filibuster, so Supreme Court nominations can't be filibustered. It used to be able to be filibustered, but Harry Reid blew up the filibuster so that Obama could pack the courts. Not just Supreme Court, but district courts, appellate courts, and so forth and so on. So that tool is gone. And then back when, I forget who was president, but it was a Republican was president, Supreme Court opening came up, and Joe Biden, who was at the time a senator, and he might have been chairman of the Judiciary Committee at the time, said, you can't, a lame duck president in the last year of his term can't nominate Supreme Court nominees. That's not right. That's not right, because the people have voted. The people can't vote on the president that's going to nominate. So Mitch McConnell and the boys said, hey, we're simply invoking the Biden rule here on Merrick Garland. Obama's in his swan song year. And Joe Biden said way back when that you shouldn't have a Supreme Court nomination and a confirmation battle during a presidential election year. And so the Republicans didn't. The Democrats are fit to be tied. They think Merrick Garland was savaged and cheated out of his seat. They think they were cheated out of his seat. Republicans just used the Biden rule. As in Joe Biden, nicknamed Joe Bite Me, the vice president for Obama. But the Democrat, this is another thing. They're running around acting like all of this is to get even for what was done to Merrick Garland. He was really savagely treated, unfairly treated. It was mean what the Republicans did. He was a decent guy, would have been great in the court, but the Republicans said no, so this is payback. Well, I'm just telling you, if Obama had a chance to nominate somebody when it was not an election year, he would not have picked Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland was never going to be on the Supreme Court. Obama would have picked somebody very young, very progressive, very liberal, very communist, who was going to be on that court for 40 years. It was never going to be Merrick Garland. So don't buy for this, crying over spilt milk over the savage, unfair deal that Merrick Garland got. So, the Republicans couldn't make that deal anyway because Trump would have to pick Merrick Garland. You'd have to talk Trump into selecting Merrick Garland. The Democrats are not going to sit by and let Kavanaugh get confirmed after all this. They're going to go down with the ship, whatever that means. The time to do this, I know that the Republicans are worried about Murkowski fading away and dropping off and maybe Susan Collins, but the turtle has been pretty fired up lately. Mitch McConnell on the floor of the Senate, he reached 5 on the Richter scale. That's when you and I just get up. He's really fired up is about how you and I feel just 30 seconds after waking up. Yeah, I take a break. Nope, I got time. I get to squeeze one more call in here, using our time wisely. Jenny in Wyoming, welcome. I'm glad you called.
Hi, Rush. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So I thought it was important that I call in because just by coincidence, I was at Yale the same year as Brett Kavanaugh, and I was even in the same residential college that he was a member of.
What year are we talking about here?
So from 1983 through 1987.
And you were in the same residential college?
Yes. So
what does that mean for us dropouts? What is a residential college?
It's they assign people to colleges. There's 12 colleges at Yale, or now I think there's one more. At the time there were 12, and there's about 120 each college, and it just subdivides the grouping of the students so that they know each other more closely. They live in the same dormitories.
Okay, residential, so it's where you live. Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, and they get to know each other fairly well.
Right, okay.
So if I had to describe Brett Kavanaugh that I knew from 1983 through 1987, I would describe him with one word as kind. He was kind, he was gentle, he was gracious, he was thoughtful. He was never somebody I would ever think of as a, quote, partier. He was a good man, and I'm just offended at all of this that's coming out. I don't associate that at all with the person that I knew.
Were you afraid?
Very kind man, very soft-spoken, very, very thoughtful.
Were you ever afraid of him?
Never. He was gentle, a sweetheart.
Well, you had to know him pretty well, to make a judgment that he was gentle and a sweetheart. You wouldn't say that about somebody to see walking on the quadrangle. You'd have to get to know them a little bit.
Right. No, we weren't close friends or besties or anything like that. He was just another person in this group of 120 that all kind of know each other. You're in the dining hall together.
Let me ask you this. Okay, so 120 people. Were any of them, that, as you recall, was there any scuttlebutt reputation, winks and nods and whispers, be careful of this Kavanaugh guy. The guy he's a snaky, sneaky, looks like this, but don't be in a room alone with him. Was there ever anything like that?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And if there had been, I would have known because it was a small group of people. No, he was just a normal, nice guy.
So all of this that you're hearing about him, it has to sound like nothing you experienced or knew. It has to sound strange and almost incomprehensible.
Exactly. And I've even had two reporters contact me. The Huffington Post called me yesterday, and it's so strange because I live in Wyoming. I'm out in the middle of nowhere, and reporters do not usually call me, of all people.
Right.
And they're trying to get dirt on him. I've had this happen once in the middle of the summer, and the person who called, the reporter, in the middle of the summer, when I wasn't able to give her any dirt, she started to lead me, just like leading a witness, and started suggesting terrible things I should say about him. And when I wasn't able to do that, she started leading me down. Did I say anything negative about the groups that he participated in, the clubs that he was a part of while he was at Yale? And I wouldn't say anything negative about them as well. I didn't have anything negative to say, but I was really offended that reporters are calling me, of all people, to get negative things to come up with. And it really makes me suspicious that these women who are coming forward have had something similar done to them as well, that somebody is leading them, is drawing them out.
Wait, but here, you said you got a call from the Huffing and Puffington Post yesterday?
I did.
Can you hang on? I got to take an obscene profit break here. We're a capitalist show. Can you hang on for a minute? We'll come back. She just dropped off out there, but we get, whether you know it or not, your number. We have a deal with Google. And so we're going to try to, just kidding. I shouldn't have said, just made that up. Just flip it here with the news.
Know the truth on the EIB network.
Penny in Wyoming, who was at Yale, in a residential college at the same time as Brett Kavanaugh for a number of years. Your call yesterday from the Huffing and Puffington Post, did they try the same thing yesterday? Did they try to lead you into answers they already had? We're trying to get you to confirm?
Honestly, I sort of directed the conversation earlier than giving her a chance to do that. It was a very young girl. I did ask her age. She was 28. And I was thinking, this girl doesn't know anything. She wasn't even around during the Clinton era. She's kind of history here. And when I talked with her about it, I sort of turned all the questions back onto her. And
give me an example of that. Give me an example of.
So I talked about how the reporter who had called me in the summer had been very manipulative and was leading, and I asked her, what does it mean to be a journalist, and are you trying to create the news that you want to hear, or are you actually asking about it and wanting to learn something, honest and true, and what is truth? So I think I probably surprised her with some of that. But
what did she say when you asked her if she wanted to make news or actually learn something?
Well, the reply to that was that we have to protect these women, and that they have rights to, in that kind of angle, defending the women. And I talked about how, in my opinion, that Brett Kavanaugh is the victim. I mean, he is truly the one being victimized. And I asked her how it would feel if you had worked all of your life and had been a good person and been conscientious and had done the right thing, and then had suddenly, at this important moment in your career, been attacked wrongly accused, and how that would make her feel. And her response was that, well, he would still have a good job anyway.
Okay, you know what, Jenny? Thank you for letting us call you back. This has been eye-opening, and I appreciate it. Just to review, she went to Yale, same time Brett Kavanaugh was there, same residential college, knew him, not well or intimately, but knew him. And none of this that she's hearing about him is anything she even thinks possible. Never saw one shred of evidence about any of it. Now, this little info bay from the Huffing and Puffington Post Huffing and Puffington Post. What would you think she was at? What would you think if you'd led a great life, you hadn't done anything to anybody, and all of a sudden here comes somebody with an allegation that they can't prove that you've done? Well, I would still have a good job anyway, even if well, this tells you how they're thinking, how they're justifying this to themselves. These reporters, particularly these young ones, are saying, even if Kavanaugh's kept off the court, he's still got a great job. He's still going to be on the D.C. Circuit. No, he's not. This is one of the reasons Kavanaugh is fighting. So look, if it survives, if this outrage, if this perversion of truth, if this vile corruption survives, and if it is at the end of this process considered true that Kavanaugh is a sexual predator, how does a sexual predator stay on the D.C. Circuit? This is not just to keep him off the Supreme Court. They're trying to ruin this man and destroy his life, reputation, career, family, and future, folks. That's who we're dealing with, and that's why this vote has to happen, and he has to be confirmed. This cannot go on like this. There's way too much at stake back in the Senate.
In times like these, we need him more than ever. Rush on the EIB network.
As was the case yesterday, we'll dig deep into the audio soundbite roster because we got a lot of gold in there when we get back from our obscene capitalistic profit timeout here on the EIB network. You can make book on this too. Ruth Buzzy Ginsburg. She's going to hang on as long as she can. Her objective is to hang on to Rush Limbaugh at 800-282-2882, and the email address is lrushbo@eibnet.us. I want to make this is probably foolish, but I have the opportunity here, and I'm going to give it just a little bit of a shot. Over the years, I have very rarely made personal appeals to elected officials on the belief that it would be unsuccessful, wouldn't work. And it's probably still the case. However, if I had a chance to talk to Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, I would like to say just one thing primarily to them. I just saw a little news report that they're both wavering. Murkowski under the idea that it really would be great if we could have an FBI investigation. That would answer all the questions. Susan Collins, I don't know what specific thing or things that make it impossible for her to openly say she would support Kavanaugh right now, despite how they've treated her. They have disrespected her. They have blackmailed her. They've threatened her. They have run a GoFundMe campaign, the left has, on Susan Collins, claiming that they're going to fund an opponent of hers to the tune of $1 million to start unless she commits to voting no on Kavanaugh. She stood her ground. She wouldn't offer that promise. So they started to harass her with cardboard cutouts 3 feet in length of male genitalia. She openly expressed her disgust for some Democrat tactics and so forth. I know the pressure is on both Senator Murkowski and Senator Collins to look at this as male versus female, and they are being pressured to be loyal to their gender here, and they're being pressured to acquiesce to the Democrat leftist line of thought, which is that a woman must be believed, regardless and despite no evidence. A woman must be believed because men just naturally can't be trusted. And if there is even a slithering doubt of this, that Kavanaugh cannot possibly be confirmed. And I would, in probably wasted breath, ask both of them to rise above gender here and look at this in terms of human decency, basic humanity. It cannot have escaped either of you ladies how Judge Kavanaugh and his family have been treated. It can't escape you how he passed every exam before your committee with flying colors. You cannot ignore his overwhelming qualifications, his judicial temperament. You cannot overlook that he has the characteristics that even brilliant leftist lawyers in this process acknowledged, that just in terms of jurisprudence, there isn't anybody more qualified or better to put on the Supreme Court than Brett Kavanaugh at any time. Not now, not just now, but at any time. And I would ask both of you ladies to just sit back, step back, and take a look at what this process has been and what its objective really is. And it's nothing about the Supreme Court, ladies. I mean, the left doesn't think that Kavanaugh poses a threat to the court. Kavanaugh poses a threat to them and their use of the court. They use the court as a political backstop for when they lose elections. But in terms of confirming or not confirming a human being who's qualified, you're not going to find anybody better than Judge Kavanaugh. And then take a look at what's being done to him and his family. Do you want to be a party to that? You really want to be a party to it's not just a smear campaign. This is an outright, open, in front of everybody who wants to see it for what it is, effort to destroy a fine man and his family, his entire life's work and future. Does this accuser have that kind of evidence? Does the accuser have that degree of evidence that is worthy of the full destruction of an American life, an American career, and an American family that poses a threat to no one. Does this accuser, or do any of the others, do they really have, Senators Murkowski and Senator Collins, do they really have that kind of evidence? If they do, why are you still struggling with the decision? If you think that what these accusers have is true, then it ought not be even something you have to think about. But the fact that you're going back and forth on this is quite indicative that you don't think that whatever the accuser has or is saying is sufficient. We're not talking about just keeping somebody off the court here. We're not talking about just defeating a Donald Trump nominee. Do you want to be party to what the objective here really is? Does Brett Kavanaugh, American citizen, Brett Kavanaugh's wife and kids, do they deserve, have they done anything that would warrant the ruination of their entire lives? It's not correct to say that if this doesn't work out, that Kavanaugh will have something to fall back on. They are trying to take that away, too. It appears to me that there isn't any evidence here, that what we have is a last-minute, late-breaking allegation with no substance whatsoever and a reluctant witness, a reluctant victim, to come forward and make the case that something that happened 35 years ago that cannot be established and cannot be proved, even if Senator Murkowski, the FBI, got involved. There is no way any investigative agency will be able to determine. But even the worst of her allegations do not warrant what the end result here and what the unabashed effort of the Democrats is. Now, I know I'm probably spitballs here to Battleship, but I couldn't be a party to this. And I think so much of what happens in Washington, Ari Fleischer was right, it's a sick town right now. And I don't think it actually crosses the minds of people who find themselves in the middle of this, as in senators, what's really at stake here. And I'm not talking about politics. We're talking about a human being, an American citizen of great stature, who is being destroyed. They're attempting to literally destroy, and there doesn't seem to be any concern about that. Nobody seems to have any guilt or conscience about what the end result of this, with no evidence whatsoever, would end up being. Is it that easy in Washington to destroy people? Is it really this easy? Is this all it takes? Yeah, I just saw Bill Cosby sentenced to 3 to 10 years in state prison as a sexually violent predator, $25,000 fine, and he has to pay the cost of prosecuting himself. There's a lot of evidence there. Senators Murkowski and Collins, there was a lot of evidence there. There isn't a whole lot of doubt about the Bill Cosby cases, but this. But is it this easy to destroy people? I mean, we outside of Washington, we see this happening so frequently that we wonder. We hear about humanity and tolerance and compassion. We don't see any of it in Washington. We're talking about and it seems like it's a one-way street, the destruction of lives here, careers, the destruction of the ability to earn a living. As a human being, you cannot live a life much more devoted than Brett Kavanaugh has. And to see it so seemingly relatively easy to destroy in today's Washington is really scary. A little bit sobering. You claim to want to see evidence, but there isn't any. And there isn't going to be any. The politics of it, you're afraid to reject the allegation of a woman because you're betraying your gender. I would ask you, every senator in Washington, to rise above that. We're not talking about gender and loyalty to genders here. That's identity politics. We're talking about humanity, human being here. Didn't do anything to anybody, by the way, before this all started. There wasn't one allegation that Brett Kavanaugh had done anything to anybody, had harmed anybody. So it just seems to me that, well, I know you've got a tough call to make in your world. Your women, the pressures here to be loyal to gender, and of course, there are stories of male abuse and harassment that are true. Undeniably so. But just because there's evidence that it has happened and does happen doesn't make it so in this case. And it just seems so obvious that the Democrats are attempting to continue to thwart the will of the American people every day. This nomination is the result of the American people electing Donald Trump. And despite the efforts of some in that town to say that his election was illegitimate because he colluded with Russia, look at all of the things for which there is no evidence that Washington, D.C. is operating under. The will of the American people is on display and at stake here. And it just seems that it needs to be treated a little bit more seriously than the politics as usual or the politics of the day regarding the Me Too movement. None of that seems relevant here. I keep hoping every day that I'm going to wake up and see that Collins and Murkowski have made up their minds that after looking at this and listening to everything, that there just isn't enough here to do what would be the result here, and that's destroy the life and career of somebody. Does anybody deserve that who has not committed a crime? Or has he? Has he committed a crime by being nominated by Donald Trump? Has he committed a crime by being conservative? Has he committed a crime believing in the original intent of the Constitution? Has he committed a crime in his various opinions from the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals? Well, no, he hasn't, unless you allow conservative thought, Republican ideas to be judged as criminal. Please don't participate in that. Realize you have a tough decision in your minds. And I know the immense pressure you both are under. But having a sense of decency toward humanity and being unwilling to participate in what is so obviously an effort to destroy, not just prevent a confirmation, but to destroy a human being with innuendo and no evidence. It can't be easy to be part of that. I hope it isn't.
Take on the left with a Limbaugh letter. In the next issue, Rush talks Trump with former federal prosecutor Sidney Powell.
I asked her point blank, when do you think the Mueller investigation is going to end?
Read her unnerving answer, only in the Limbaugh letter. Rush's potent weapon of truth. Available in digital and print editions at rushlimbaugh.com. You're listening to the EIB Network.
Folks, you got to hear this. This Donald Trump today at the United Nations. I have a pretty good memory. I don't remember hearing this way. I know we've had presidents go up and provide lip service in attacking the Soviets back during the Cold War, but taking on communism and socialism, using Venezuela as the real-life example of the horror, the sheer horror and terror of socialism and communism, with a bunch of communist dictators in the room. A bunch of tyranny experts in the room. Donald Trump, without a raised voice and without any bombast, let them have it.
Not long ago, Venezuela was one of the richest countries on earth. Today, socialism has bankrupted the oil-rich nation and driven its people into abject poverty. Virtually everywhere socialism or communism has been tried, it has produced suffering, corruption, and decay. Socialism's thirst for power leads to expansion, incursion, and oppression. All nations of the world should resist socialism and the misery that it brings to everyone. In that spirit, we ask the nations gathered here to join us in calling for the restoration of democracy in Venezuela.
Man, that's just the tip of the iceberg. His entire speech at the UN today was perfection from beginning to end, in tone, in comportment, in morality. Perfect. It was a grand slam home run. Even the never-Trumpers, who I think are the most dangerous Trump critics out there, these never-Trumpers on the right, even they cannot poke holes at Trump's behavior in this particular address. Let me grab a quick call. San Antonio, this is Patty. Is that right? Yeah, hi, Patty. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thank you.
Great. My thought is that when the day is done, this might actually end up being a good thing in the long run. I mean, it's horrible now, but we've seen that phenomenon where so many Supreme Court justices have been conservative prior to their appointment to the court. And then once they get into Washington and they get into that Washington bubble, they start going to the middle or even to the left. And my thought is that if Kavanaugh does get confirmed, he will know without a doubt who they are. I don't think he'll ever trust them again. And I think in a way that would almost ensure that he continues to,
So you don't think that they'll be able to buy him off on a case-by-case basis with puff pieces in the Washington Post style section? If he's
Exactly. I think he would be like Justice Thomas, who has been just stalwart, who has just been, completely right on, is immovable.
Boy, are you right about that. Clarence Thomas, what a godsend for the court and for America. Clarence Thomas is. Not just has been, but is. And his legal mind and his brilliance is on display with every opinion he writes or concurs or dissents from. He's a genuine treasure, and you're right about Kavanaugh. I don't think it was ever a problem with him anyway, though, to say the truth.
Now a message from President Barack Obama on how he plans to help Americans cope with higher gasoline prices.
My fellow Americans, I'm sure that you...
And a legend, a way of life. Learn it, love it, live it. A household name in all four corners of the world. And now, back to the phones of the Green Bay area with Attila. Attila, welcome to the EIB Network. Hello.
Thank you. I'm a lifer. 1989, I was in high school, and I started listening to you while mowing my yard.
Well, I appreciate that. That's always great to hear from lifers. Thank you so much.
Yes, we need lions in this day and age, not lambs. And you, sir, are a lion who inspires a lot of folks in the younger generation like Ben Ferguson and John Muir of our Green Bay radio station, young conservative. Anyways, to my point, sir, I feel kicked in the gut, and I want your reaction. Reason guided by experience and wisdom. What is your take, Rush, on the retraction of the declassification order by the president for the text messages between Peter Strzok, Donkey Teeth, Lisa Page, and Bruce Orr and Andrew McCabe and the FISA? I was so excited, and then the retraction came. The wind is out of my sails, and I wanted your reaction.
You're not alone in that. A lot of people, and especially people like Devin Nunes and Mark Meadows, members of Congress, had a lot invested in this stuff being declassified and made public. And declassification is one thing, making it public is another. And here's what happened. Supposedly, some of our allies appealed to President Trump to not make the stuff public because it would be so embarrassing to them. Translation, the Brits. Translation, Cambridge and Oxford professors who do double time at MI6 and MI5, plus people, the spies and so forth who work there. Because there is no doubt in my mind, given Stephen Halper and Joseph Mifsud and some of the others that the FBI hired as embedded spies in the Trump campaign, there's no doubt in my mind that they are up to their necks in this stuff themselves. And what's in these documents proves the coup. It establishes what was going on. And the deep state is witnessing this unravel in front of their faces. That's why all of this is happening with Rosenstein. And there obviously was an appeal made to Trump by our allies to not make this public for fear of damaging the allied relationship. At some point, that has to go by the wayside. I was disappointed like you, and a lot of people were, because we've been led to believe that these documents will put an end to all this and bring to light everything we have thought we've known that's been going on, that it will prove it, and even more. And I am a firm believer that this stuff is going to be made public at some point. I really do believe it is. I think Trump acquiesced to the wishes here of our allies for the time being, for the sake of other elements of his foreign policy that he wants to achieve. For example, at the United Nations today, this speech of his, it was strong. It was America first. He told Germany not to be dependent on one source of energy. This is Russia. But he didn't ream them. He just pointed out the mistake that they're making. He really laid out Iran, all of the horrible things that Iran has done. And he made a joke about Rouhani. He said, everything I hear about the guy is a very, very nice guy, but no, I don't expect to be chatting with him this month or this week. The Brexit is still a mess, and Trump has a desired outcome with that. So I think this is Trump balancing the alternatives and realizing he can make it public at any time. The Brits made a request. He's going to honor the request for whatever foreign policy considerations he thinks are important. But I think he's going to publicize it at some point. Remember, we've still got 40 days before the midterms. Take 10 off because you don't have enough lead time for it to get out there and permeate. So say we got 30 days. I do believe, I don't know anything, but I do believe that it's going to happen. And in fact, I think there's so much going on. I mentioned earlier that the Mueller investigation, I have a sense. I get these instincts, these gut feelings that pop up now and then. And I really believe that the wind is gone from the Mueller investigation because there isn't anything there. And they knew even before Mueller started that there wasn't any collusion, so they were looking for ways to maybe make people think there was. They couldn't even find that. They couldn't even find fake evidence. They couldn't even manufacture credible fake evidence. After all of the newspaper stories, after all of the attempts that have been made, I don't think Mueller is winding down for any reason other than he knows there's no there there. But I think these documents have to come out, because that would end this, and it would end this quickly, and this needs to be ended like the Kavanaugh confirmation vote needs to happen quickly. There has been so much government misconduct and corruption that it needs to come to light, and people need to know just how extensive it was. People need to know exactly what happened from the files made by the conspirators and the people involved in this coup themselves. People need to know that there was indeed, from the upper echelon of the Obama Department of Justice and the Obama intelligence apparatus, a purposeful, coordinated effort to undermine a campaign first, a transition second, and a presidency third. This needs to come out. It needs to be made public. The American people need to see the evidence, not written by newspapers, not manufactured by anonymous sources, but actual documents created by the participants who had to, because of numerous regulations and laws, document what they were doing. There's also something else. You know, Sidney Powell, the author of a great book, License to Lie, which I have cited and quoted here on numerous previous occasions, she makes the point. Remember the Wiener laptop that Comey used to reopen the Hillary email investigation on October 28th, 2016? The Democrats erupted over this. It was because some of Hillary's State Department emails were found on Huma Abedin's husband's computer. Carlos Danger. That would be Anthony Weiner. This is the guy that was another Democrat, by the way, who was texting nude photos of his penis to young girls. Why men do that, I'll never know, but I guess he thought he was particularly beautiful in that way. And he's sending him out there to teenage girls, and Huma is embarrassed and humiliated, but Huma stays with him for the duration, following the great example of Hillary Clinton. And she did so, but on that computer, remember they told us in that weekend that there were tens of thousands of emails, and in 2 days they told us they'd reviewed them all. Nothing to see here. We are officially closing the case. They didn't read those emails on that computer, and the point has been made that we need to see that laptop. We need to see what was on that laptop, because on that laptop, perhaps the names of every person in the House or Senate for whom misconduct claims were paid from a congressional slush fund. Have you heard about this fund, folks? There was members of Congress created a fund. They control the purse strings of the government, the budget. They created a fund, a pile of money from which misconduct claims against them would be paid. So if you are an abused woman or an abused employee, a mistreated whatever, and you charge them, file suit, the money to pay off the accusers came out of this slush fund. And supposedly the Wiener laptop has some of that evidence on it. And it's elsewhere as well. But it especially at this juncture with what they're trying to do to Brett Kavanaugh, it would be highly helpful and informative to find out the names of every person in the House or Senate for whom misconduct claims were paid and how much, and what the allegations are. And we need it before voting starts, early voting, absentee voting. That needs to happen too. All of this, while everybody's focusing on what Kavanaugh did or didn't do, and he didn't do it because nobody has any evidence that he did, we have a slush fund and we have a money pool from which misconduct claims have been paid. For whom? how much, and for what were they accused? The double standard here seems like it's the only standard that exists in Washington. So you've got a guy, Kavanaugh, who hasn't done anything, nothing close to what he's been accused of. Certainly nobody can prove it. There isn't any evidence for any of these allegations. And yet evidence for mistreatment of women and abuse abounds elsewhere, but it's hidden and swept under the rug and paid off privately with government money. And a lot of this could be learned easily with the declassification of certain documents. So I'm with you out there, Attila, that it needs to happen. The only thing I can think of is that Trump's foreign policy concerns, policies, desires, need cooperation from some of these allies. But I hope this is just a temporary delay. And that's why at every Trump rally, what is the number one sign you see? Outside of Make America, what's the number one sign you see at a Trump rally, Mr. Snerdley? Nope, drain the swamp. Drain the swamp is number one. Build the wall, number two, and according to lock her up is really a chant. But drain the swamp is why Trump was sent there. And declassifying these documents would be a giant step for mankind in draining the swamp.
How does he squeeze all this stuff in just 3 hours a day? Rush on the EIB network.
Wait, grab soundbite number one. I've alluded to this. I gotta let you hear part of this. This is just some of it. It was last night, National Geographic Channel. They did a show on the 90s focusing on how I, your beloved host, changed politics forever. And in their view, not in a good way.
Before 1987, the fairness doctrine required broadcasters to give airtime to opposing viewpoints. Not anymore.
The government suddenly said, equal time, fairness doctrine, forget that. We'll get rid of that. And so you had this incredible rise of right-wing talk radio.
And one voice rules the airwaves.
Greetings to you, conversationalists all across the fruited plain, and welcome to the award-winning, thrill-packed, ever-exciting, increasingly popular, growing by leaps and bounds, Rush Limbaugh program.
Once the fairness doctrine was eliminated, once the barriers to multiple ownership broke down, you could drive from Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, to Santa Barbara, California, and hear nothing but Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah, that just happened, right? Yeah, you people, after 30 years, you can't get this right. You don't even know what equal time and fairness doctrines are. Equal time is still out there when it comes to politics and campaigns and so forth. It's not been lifted. So it just magically happened that I'm on every radio station from New York to Santa Barbara. There was no effort. There was no work. There was no achievement necessary. We didn't have to win ratings battles. No, it just happened. What a crock. There's more to this. Perhaps we should reserve time tomorrow. Let's see. Yeah, like there's two more of these. You can always, folks, you can tell when the left thinks they're in trouble. They do this kind of stuff, and they blame me for arriving and disrupting what they had at the time was a monopoly on the news and on the media. I always looked at this as when this stuff kicks up, they think they're in trouble. They start screaming, "It's not fair! It's not fair! We owned everything, and then this guy came along, fairness doctrine, we got screwed." See? Victimology. It's not their fault. No, they became victimized by this evil talk radio guy. Anyway, folks, there is a sense of empowerment, a sense of being more in control of your home environment when you install a security system in your home. And you know that would be the case. If you don't have one and you think about having one, that would be a big change. And not just for you, but every member of your family. And we hear that over and over again from listeners here who have chosen to install a Simply Safe home security system in their home. An added layer of safety in your home, above and apart from simply locking the doors every night, make sure the garage is closed, can make so much difference. Simply Safe's home security system is easy. It's easy to install. It's easy to operate. It's like an on-off switch. There's no cryptic keyboard on a wall that you have to decipher. You have a handheld device that lets you activate or deactivate the system. But don't think that because it's simple, it's not effective. It is. It's as effective as anything you could get. It works well. 2 million plus families now rely on Simply Safe. You know the big difference? No wires. No wires. That means there's no installation snafu. There's no ripping out walls and then putting them back together. It's wireless. Wi-Fi from the sensors to the base station. Cellular from the base station to the cops and the fire department for monitoring. And that monitoring is only $14.99 a month, not $50, and there isn't a contract to sign. Go to simplysafeusa.com and look. An apartment, a condo, a home, you can have it secured. 10% off the system at simplysafeusa.com.
The wonder of Rush will continue on the